And we're back after a long break of the for long break. Sorry about the break, everybody. My pod track shot to bed and just stopped working completely, so we had to pause all recordings. And so sadly it broke the day I was gonna record with my illustrious guest, Doc Brown, here about poetry. It's been about 2 weeks or something, but we're finally back on track. Hopefully we got more episodes coming out soon. Um I know the Sister Belloc is on a bit of a longer hiatus because Connor is busy getting married, and we'll not be able to record till August. So it'll be a lot more of these kind of episodes, maybe some solo streams, just to keep the content going. But that little housekeeping out of the way, I'm here with Doc. Doc, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about you? I've had a hell of a week, but I'm glad to be on back here with you and everyone
Absolutely,
who's listening.
I'm
So
glad to have you back because I really enjoyed our last episode on English poetry and Cadman's hymn. That was a
I
lot of
did.
fun,
Yeah, Cadman's hymn is great. It's short and it's very sweet. I like it. So
and the history of it all behind it was very interesting. So this is Doc presents. So what are you presenting? Presenting, Doc? What
today
do
I
you
am
have for us today?
presenting my single favorite. My single favorite of all the dead languages I know. So we're going to talk a little bit about Old Saxon today, if that's all right with you.
Jackson, okay.
So last time with Cadman's hymn, we looked at it's the earliest recorded piece of poetry in the English language, which is pretty cool. Cadman's hymn, if anyone recalls, watch the stream or watch the recording, is in Old English, the ancestor of what we're speaking on this stream right here. So that's kind of cool. There was kind of a cousin language to Old English called Old Saxon, and it's not well remembered because it kind of didn't grow up to be anything, if you will. It kind of just it fizzled out at some point.
How does real
Yeah,
quick
go ahead.
side quest? How does that come about? Is it like a small area has that language and more people move in
No,
and they
well,
have
it
about?
actually
Like what's the
so
story?
Old Saxon is the ancestor of modern day Low German, which is not the same thing as German. The issue is that modern day German has overtaken Low German. Low German is unfortunately a dying language. Only really old people in certain parts of northern Germany still speak it. So it is technically still alive, but let's say it's very endangered. So unfortunately, the modern ancestor of what we're going to be looking at today is probably going to die out in the next. I mean, I don't say this with any happiness. I don't like it when languages die, but it's probably the next 20 to 30 years. It might,
Wow.
who knows? You never know. Welsh was able to be preserved. Irish is holding on and will likely be preserved. You can sort of turn the tide against language loss, but I don't know. Low German, I do know from colleagues that I have from northern Germany who are from towns where like their grandparents spoke Low German. Hardly anyone speaks it anymore. Those same colleagues I have who are German, they don't speak Low German natively. They speak modern German natively. And so it's one of these things where, unfortunately, we hope. I try to stay hopeful. Languages can, unfortunately, kind of, sometimes languages die, like there's a catastrophic event. Everyone is killed, or there's a disease, or there's a volcano, or an earthquake. And sometimes, though, they just kind of like fizzle. Languages can kind of just fizzle slowly over time. And you can lose a language within 1 to 2 generations if you're not careful. It's actually really easy to lose languages. And obviously I'm a proud American and I think people should speak English in America, but in the sense of everyone should know how to speak English in America. I'm multilingual. I like people speaking multiple languages. So I'm not an English only American guy. I'm like you should speak English if you're here kind of guy, but you should
Yeah.
also maintain whatever you have. I'm actually very Teddy Roosevelt in this. Like, be American first and foremost, and speak English. But you should also probably teach your kids. If you have an ancestral language, you should also. I mean, these things don't need to be mutually exclusive, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can have both. That's totally fine. I like that. Like, I'm like that, so it's fine. But yeah, you can lose languages really quickly. And it's a shame. I mean, like, I don't know. And so anyhow,
Well, I'm not sure about this, but I can imagine maintaining a language is kind of crucial for maintaining a culture associated with that language. Does that make
yeah.
sense? Okay.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing about Low German is it actually used to be a really important language, high prestige language. So back in the later part, like 14th century onwards, really before that, but starting really in the like 14th century, you get the Hanseatic Trading League, which is this basically like a trading consortium, I guess, to use a modern term, that all of the ports in the Baltic and North Sea area, like so ports like Hamburg, Bremen in Germany, but also places like London, places like Bergen in Norway, Oslo, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Riga, Helsinki, all of these different places. They're in areas that speak different languages, so they had to have a unified trade language, and their trade language was Low German, and so Low German used to be like a big, strong language with lots of speakers, and everyone wanted to learn it so they could trade and make money on this marketplace of the Hanseatic Trading League. In any case, it was a big deal. And then over time, it just kind of fizzled. And then it sort of just became really kind of like a local language in parts of northern Germany. And again, sadly, as of right now, it's old people who still speak it with each other, which is great, but they're not really passing it on to younger generations. And if you don't pass a language on to other generations, once those people die, it's gone. It's no longer preserved. Languages have to be passed on, right? Like from one generation to the next. Otherwise, you don't have languages live. It's just like people, right? You got to have more people. You got to have more people to pass languages to. So, in any case, it's kind of a bummer, but yeah, that's how it happens. In any case, Low German, it still is technically around. It's a minority language. It is endangered. We hope and pray it holds on. I am not the most hopeful because in Germany, I guess we could tie this back into a little bit of maybe more of an explicitly right-wing political take. Modern Germany is a nation state, and modern Germany as a country is very young. America is much older than Germany, and I don't mean the German people, of course. I mean the current political situation in Germany, right?
Yes.
It's only since the reunification that is even a thing. So we're running on like roughly 30 years here, right? Like it's a very young country. Germans hate when I say this, but it's true. Their land is ancient, but their country is their political system, let's say, right, is very modern. And modern nation states hate having any kind of diversity of language, right? Modern nation states want cookie cutter people. They want cookie cutter outcomes. I think, Germany has tried, to give them some credit. They've tried to preserve Low German. They have tried, but the problem is that young people just aren't learning it. And so try as you might, you can funnel as much cash at the problem as you want. If, if people aren't learning the language, it's kind of gone at some point, right?
What is the difference between regular German and Low German? Like,
they're different languages. So like, when I look at, I can kind of understand Low German because I also speak Dutch. So Low German in many ways is actually closer to modern day Dutch than it is to modern day German, because historically it was sort of in between both of the languages. It was its own thing. Because again, Germany as a modern country is so new. Like, right, there was all these different little principalities and smaller kingdoms in Germany for a long, long time. Germany wasn't one thing. And it's, it's, you can blame the Prussians. You can, if you want, the Prussian unification probably had something to do with this. They're trying to get all these little kingdoms to work together, and, that's fine. But like, there was no Holy Roman Empire. There was never, for a long period of time, there wasn't really one unified German polity. And so it was okay. Everyone kind of spoke their own little version of German. But the thing was, if you went from like Switzerland in the south to like Flensburg in the north, those people couldn't understand each other. They were effectively different languages. And the things that people were speaking up way in the north were basically Low German. When Germany unifies, which is a whole complex thing, and it tries several times to unify, the 20th century, 20th century Germans happen. There's a whole thing with that. You can read about that if you want, dear listeners. Basically, everyone now, to make a long story longer, is forced into kind of this cookie cutter, hey, you can have your dialects at home, that's great, but you need to learn standard German. Again, it makes sense from a modern nation state perspective, but what it does unfortunately do, there's a yin to the yang, is it makes it so younger kids are like, well, why would I learn Low German? because that's only what grandpa speaks, and I want to talk to my friends, and that's weird to speak Low German. And so unfortunately, it just kind of, it fizzles. Languages can fizzle. In any case, so modern Low German, its ancestor language, its earliest recorded ancestor language is Old Saxon. This is the language spoken by Saxons. Caleb, I don't know if you've ever heard anything about the Saxons.
I know a bit.
They had, if anyone's a fan of Charlemagne, as I am, I'm a Charlemagne fan. Charlemagne is pretty cool. Charlemagne was a Frank, so he spoke Frankish, which was a different language than Saxon. Different but related. He also spoke, Old French, and he spoke several different languages because he had to do that as being emperor. The Saxons were again the ancestors of modern day Northern Germans. There's still regions of Germany today that are called Saxony. There's Lower Saxony. Different parts of Germany is called Saxony. This is the area that historically would have been populated by Saxons. Saxons, you might also hear that term in the word Anglo-Saxon. So this is the group of different tribes that invades Britain and ends up becoming the English. So why is that important? Because the Old English we talked about last time is a closely related language to the language we're going to look at today. The Saxons were notable for not wanting to convert to Christianity. So whereas like the Franks embraced Christianity pretty wholeheartedly, I mean, probably also because of political reasons, right? Like, I'm not saying it was one or the other. It was probably both, right? People convert for various reasons. It's not just one thing, right?
I've never really been opposed to the idea of political conversions, because I think that maybe how one generation starts, but that if they are doing it politically, the kids are raised in that kind of political atmosphere, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not really opposed to it. I see like a little bit of a tangent, but you see these memes of people, these online memes on Twitter, and it's like convert to Christianity because it's the base religion, and people attack that. I get it. You shouldn't convert just because it's based, but at the same time, if that is the lifestyle, if we're advertising if the meme is advertising a way of living, a moral way of living, and if that's deemed as based, and you say, hey, here's how you live a more based life, and the past is Christianity, I don't necessarily see that as being a bad means.
If it gets you through the door, right? Like, if it gets you through the door and keeps you in the door, right? Like something like that, that's my take on it. Franks were pretty, for Charlemagne was, despite being a flawed person as we all are, there's a reason why a lot of people in continental Europe today, Western Europe, are related to him. Let's just say that. He has a strong line. I really like Charlemagne. He's a patron of the arts, patron of universities. If anyone has ever been to Aachen, which is in modern day Western Germany, I highly recommend going to Aachen. Go to the Aachen Cathedral, and you will see a beautiful cathedral commissioned by Charlemagne. And if you're a fan of the Lord of the Rings movies at all, the architecture of the Aachen Cathedral, Charlemagne's cathedral, was a direct inspiration for Gondor.
Oh,
so it's cool. It's literally like going to church in Gondor.
So two things before we move on to the next thing. One, it is cool that you reference how do you say it? Aachen? How do you say that?
Aachen.
Aachen.
Yeah, Aachen.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because bit of a nerd point. I play Civilization 6 a lot, and I play Germany a lot, and I have no idea how to pronounce half the names. So now that I know how to pronounce that name, it's like the second city you get. That's good to know. So thank you for that.
Well, and Aachen was the seat of Charlemagne's power. That was basically his seat. That was his main political center. He established Aachen. He's like, Aachen is going to be the seat of my power. And so that's part of the reason why that cathedral is so fancy and cool, is because if you're going to have, the dude there, then you better have a fancy cathedral too, right? To have he's there. So, yeah.
Second thing on the Saxons, I don't know enough about the Saxon history to say this is a correct point or not, but I read an article a while back on the J.R.R. Tolkien went to a lecture from Hilaire Belloc, and Belloc said something that in the lecture, when the guy who was saying was Tolkien nudged him, it was a priest, was like nudged him, like, hey, you gotta talk to him about that afterwards, because he's not. It's Belloc said that the Saxon people have made zero contributions to history as a whole.
Wow.
That's one of his hot takes. And Tolkien,
Wow.
obviously being the Saxon guy, probably disagrees with that.
Oh yeah, Tolkien's
But
gonna
that's
have some serious. I mean, I'm with Grandpa Tolkien on this. No, that's them's fighting words right there.
that's it's a very that's a strong claim for any group of people. Honestly, that's a very strong claim to make.
Contributions.
But I don't know what the argument was behind it. I've never found any essays or papers. I haven't found a single actual argument because we don't have all his writing, sadly. So I don't know what it was. But
it's just typical continental hatred of anything northern. Okay, the Meds always hate the Nords. Okay, it's just like
Well, Belloc was English. Well, he was English. He was Franco English.
I mean, well, the name like Belloc, right? Anyhow, sorry, I'm speaking as a Saxon here. Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, some of the Saxons do end up in England, right? And so and the Angles, the Utes, and the Saxons, which were three different related but separate tribes, over time invade Britain and create kingdoms, which then are unified under Alfred. Are one of the best. I love Alfred the Great. Unified in an actual kingdom for the English. There are connections between Anglo-Saxons in England and the Saxons in Germany. The Saxons were the ones that stayed. They didn't go on the boats and go over to Britain. They stayed. They did, unlike the Anglo-Saxons, who were, fairly accepting of Christianity over time. Definitely. It took a while, but they weren't like necessarily opposed to it, like in a violent way. I mean, there were some, but I mean, the benefits of having of having kings, and again, the church tended to support kings. That was useful politically speaking, which did help the faith spread. I mean, I'm not gonna, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna say anything that helps the faith spread is a good thing. Obviously, some kings are flawed. All right, just because you're a king doesn't make you a good person. I understand that. However, there have been some good kings. There's been a lot of bad kings too. I'm kind of, again, I'm not like a libertarian anymore, but I can see the, I don't know. Kings are what they are, right? They work for a certain time in a certain place. Some people need kings, right? Some people need kings. I get that. The Saxons didn't, who were still in Germany, modern day Germany, didn't have like a unified kingdom per se. They had various clan structures, basically still living more or less kind of a tribal existence. They refused to convert to Christianity and then also became violent towards the church. And so that pissed Charlemagne off, which makes sense from a political, but also from a religious perspective. And so Charlemagne has to, I mean, well, I'm a Charlemagne stan. I like Charlemagne. Charlemagne, in this house, Charlemagne is a hero, and he will always be a hero. Charlemagne did kill kind of a lot of Saxons to get them to stop fighting him, but I don't know, you got roving bands of pagans breaking church stuff, attacking priests. I don't know. Sometimes you got to hit people in the head. That's all I got to say.
Listen, if you're an imperial leader, you have to every once in a while. This is why I've been studying about my Roman history a lot, and you have to have a triumph every once in a while. You have to have that kind of bounty, triumph, and conquest to maintain imperial power to the masses. And sometimes it's actually necessary.
Yeah, well, it was necessary. It was necessary for Charlemagne in 782. In October of 782, there was a battle that was fought in modern day Verden, Germany, northern Germany. And basically this was when the Franks under Charlemagne said, you're not going to be doing this raiding thing anymore. You Saxons are no longer allowed to raid. You will not behave. We are going to kill a fair number of you. So some people call this a war crime. I scoff at that because honestly, the death tolls were probably inflated to make the Franks seem real cool. We killed thousands. I mean, maybe you did kill thousands, but everyone killed thousands in these older annals, right? Everything is like a big number. It's like in Vietnam where America was killing so many VC, and like how many VC did we really kill? Who knows? But the numbers always go up.
This is my favorite quote from a British historian, Dominic Sandbrook. Any number before 1700s is made up.
Yeah. So some people posit around 4,500 were killed. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not really I'm a philologist. I'm not really a military historian. I would question some of those numbers just from a gut feeling perspective because maybe. What did seem to have happened, which was sort of a breach of chivalry if you were fighting Christians, but remember that the Franks were not fighting Christians, they were fighting pagans. So those rules of chivalry actually didn't really apply. The Franks killed prisoners in order to basically break the will of the Saxons because they just wouldn't stop. Again, what I'm giving you is an incredibly biased take on this because this is I'm with Caleb and I can speak my mind about this. Did they kill maybe too many? Probably, but I'm not there, right? Like I can see why they did it. Technically, yeah, you probably really shouldn't kill prisoners, but if your prisoners are being really persnickety and will not stop, and if you know that the instant you let them go, they're going to go, create more war bands, well, like that.
Yeah, do what you gotta do.
Yeah, well, then you risk your own men again. You risk the peasantry that you're trying to defend, right? From a feudal perspective, you have to do what you have to do. So, no Saxon noblemen were killed after having given up. So, which people see as a blight on Charlemagne's history. I don't know. I get it. And they were forced converted. So these conversions were like forced baptized. Like, hey, you're all being baptized now, and if we catch you doing pagan stuff, there's going to be violence. And it is unfortunate. I think on that side, I think I can feel bad. On the political military side, I can see the strategy at play. I can sort of understand that. On a religious level, I get it because baptism was an outward sign of acquiescing to Christian rule. The problem is that they were baptizing all these Saxons who really didn't understand anything about Christianity. They were like, you're Christian now. And they basically said either fuck you, we're not, and just kept being pagan, or they were like, we have no idea what you mean. So it's a big problem. If you want people to stay Christian, you have to kind of teach them what it is to be Christian. Shocker, right? Like you actually have to instruct them. Again, Charlemagne's not a
Bible Belt people. Bible Belt boomers are shocked right now to hear this.
Yeah. Well, and Charlemagne's not a theologian, right? Like
yes,
he's not a theologian, so he's like, well, I'm in charge of like maintaining the realm. I'm gonna let the church do the churchy stuff, which makes sense, right? That's the church's job. So this with all this violence, basically, which again.
One more thing on Charlemagne, real quick.
Yeah.
Do you know a pope was the pope during when Charlemagne was crowned?
Let me look that up.
I know the pope. I'll tell you what it was.
Yeah, Leo the
Pope
third.
Pope Leo the third.
Yeah, the third. Yeah.
We have a Leo. We have a new Leo. They're saying Trump is the next Charlemagne. There are no coincidences. It's all divine providence. I'm calling for it now.
Insulted Charlemagne, and I am actually angry. I mean,
we'll have to just wait and see. Listen.
I don't hate Trump, but he is no Charlemagne, sir. He is no Charlemagne.
We'll have to wait. Who was the guy before Charlemagne? We need the
Pepin. No, not Pepin. Yeah, Pepin.
Okay, well, in Trump's Pepin, that makes I actually don't. I always forget his actual name. I just call him Octavian all the time. Baron.
Yeah, Baron. Yeah, I would say he might have more of a Charlemagne.
I forget Baron's name half the time and just call him Octavian.
Yeah.
When I picture Octavian, that's the kind of person I picture,
I mean, I like Trump. I just don't think he's a Charlemagne. That's okay to say.
Unfortunately.
I'm not a Charlemagne. I mean, what do you want from me? But I can call it like I see it. So yeah. In any case, lots of violence. There's a big war. There's like all this killing. And it eventually subsides. And you are then left with the problem that, Charlemagne can't fix, which is how do you actually make the Saxons really Christian? That's a much more complex problem. The violence can, in the short term, be solved with some violence, but it doesn't really fix the problem, right? Like the problem is that you have pagans running around doing pagan stuff and acting all pagany. And, if anyone's watched Dragnet, pagans, people against goodness and normalcy, right? Like you don't want them, you want Christians. So how do you do that? Well, you can't just go in and say to everyone you're Christian now and then expect that to do it. That nobody knows what that means, right? You have to make Christianity understandable to people who have never been Christian. And I don't just mean like individually, I mean on a cultural level. Their culture has no concept of what the church is talking about, right? Like salvation, what's that? Please explain. We don't know what you mean. So to make a long story a little bit longer, there is a poetic work that is composed by an unnamed monk Probably this monk worked at the monastery at Fulda. Fulda is still a place in modern Germany, northern Germany. There was a monastery at Fulda. We don't know who wrote this because he purposely kept the poetic work anonymous. He did this out of piety to not put his name on something, which is awesome and cool. Although it does drive people like me a little crazy because we would love to know who he was, just for like historical reasons. But that's fine. The work that I'm talking about is the Old Saxon Heliand. I don't know, Caleb, if you've ever heard of this term, the Heliand.
I have
Oh, you have. What
once or
what
twice.
have you heard about it?
It's a poem.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it.
That's
it
about
comes
it.
up
Okay,
in
cool.
it comes up in conversations about poems, and I haven't looked anything up into it myself. I just
But
know
to
the
paraphrase
name.
Jack Sparrow, but you have heard of it. That's cool.
Yes, I have heard of it.
Yeah, very few people actually have. The Heliand is a gospel harmony. Do you know what a gospel harmony is, Caleb?
I do not.
Okay, so a gospel harmony, Tatian's gospel harmony is one of the most famous ones. Gospel harmony, so there's 4 gospels, right?
Mm-hmm.
A gospel harmony is a genre of medieval Christian literature wherein a churchman who is wicked smart, as they say in Boston, tries to stitch together all 4 gospels into one cohesive narrative, because books were expensive to make. And if you could make one gospel harmony and copy that out and bind that, it was a lot cheaper than having tons and tons of copies of all 4 gospels. Before the printing press, books very time consuming to make, so gospel harmonies help with this sort of logistical problem. But it's not just a logistical consideration. Gospel harmonies are also a way to let's say more effectively instruct the largely illiterate masses in what the Christian gospel is about.
So it's kind of like the way the early church would use paintings to illuminate points that the masses who couldn't read.
Yeah, it kind of or harmonizes or rhymes with the icon approach. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. That's actually really cool.
Yeah. So there had been previous gospel harmonies, both in Latin, not surprisingly, but also in Old High German. That was a region of Germany that had more historical encounters with Christianity and converted sooner. The Saxons, again, remember the Saxons are like they're like the Shiite pagans, right? Like they really don't want to be Christian, right? Like they so don't want to be Christian, they're willing to use violence to resist. So they're really like hold out. They really don't like it. So you're gonna have to be smart, right? To really get to them. And so the pre-existing gospel harmonies were not really in the correct dialect. And so they were like, okay, we're gonna do a new one in Saxon. And we're gonna do it not strictly speaking as prose text, we're gonna do it as a poem. So it's a gospel harmony that is also a poem. This is very unique. There's probably been a couple others. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but in the Middle Ages, doing this as a poem was pretty unique. And on the top of that, basically the idea is we're not just going to do it as a poem, we're going to do it as a poem in the Saxon style. So we're going to tell the story of Christ in the way that Saxons would talk about their heroic deeds, in poetic verse. And it's the same kind of poetic verse that we saw in Caedmon's hymn from Old English. That kind of alliterating poetry was very popular all around the Germanic tribes. So you see it for the Old Norse, for the Vikings. Old English have it. The Anglo-Saxons in England have it. Obviously, we looked at that last time. And the Saxons have it. The Heliand is the longest existing text in the Old Saxon language. It's beautiful. It was written by one person. It has a cohesive style. It has a cohesive vocabulary. This guy who wrote this, who was himself a monk, most likely, was either Saxon himself or grew up around Saxons, because he definitely spoke the language fluently, not just the language, but understood their art, their poetic art. And the Heliand is designed to be actually performed. So most people couldn't read, right? So it's written down in order to be performed by someone who could read and knew how to be a bard. So if anyone's played Dungeons and Dragons, you hear this term bard, right? I am a bard. Well, bards actually were a real thing. There was, and bards would memorize thousands of lines of poetry and perform them. in front of usually fancy people,
That's
kings, princes,
that's
noblemen. Yeah.
speaking of memorizing poems. That's actually one of my favorite like details of history is that when printing press became a thing and books became more readily apparent, there was a fear amongst the older people that children would not be able to memorize poems anymore because they would just be able to read them.
Yeah, well, that
This,
there might be something to that.
I think there is.
So
This,
basically, the Heliand is in the same style as Beowulf. So I always call it the gospel according to Beowulf because it's basically what it is. I don't know if you know. Do you know Benjamin Bagby?
I do not.
He's an American. He's an American musician and reenactor. He has. You can stream it online. He has back in the mid 2000s. He performed not the entire poem, but the first third, the first main part of Beowulf from memory in Old English in front of an audience, and was playing an Anglo-Saxon lyre the whole time.
Okay,
And,
I gotta find this video. Hold on.
yeah, and so you have to watch it with subtitles unless you
Moses.
are nerdy enough. So it's Benjamin Bagby's Beowulf. If you just look at that, you should find it. He's not just like saying it; he's like performing the poem. So when he's Unferth, he's drunk. When he's Beowulf, he's proud, right? Like he's plays all these different characters in a language that hasn't been spoken in a very, 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 very long time, which is pretty neat. In any case, so the Heliand was designed to be performed like Beowulf. It's roughly equivalent. It's the same kind of poem. But instead of the tale of a proud king who encounters a dragon and many other things, it's the tale of Christ. But in the Heliand, I mean, his name is Christ in the Heliand, but he's called Drochten, Christ Drochten, or Drochten Thagodo. And Drochten is a term that's really hard to translate into modern English, but it means something like war chieftain. So a Drochten was someone who was nobility, but who went and fought. So he wasn't nobility who stayed behind the lines and
Wasn't there in the Cadman's hymn? Didn't we talk about a word that was translated?
Drichten. They use Drichten, which is the Old English equivalent of Drochten. Again, these languages are very, very similar.
Okay, I thought that sounded familiar.
This is a war chieftain. So both the Anglo-Saxons in England and then the Saxons who stayed in Germany, when they were being converted, the closest equivalent to the role that Christ played for them was as the war chieftain, because that was what their cultures really respected, was somebody, again, not just a king. Anyone can be a king, right? A Drochten, a war chieftain, was someone who actually went out and fought with people and risked his own life to attain victory. And that was the kind of person that if you were a Thane, and again, in the Heliand, all of the apostles are called Thanes. Thanes are sworn soldiers, right? They're warriors, really, not even soldiers. They're warriors who have sworn their life and fealty to a war chieftain. So Christ is the war chieftain. The apostles are his loyal Thanes. Well, sometimes not so loyal Thanes. They try to be loyal. They're people like the rest of us. So the entire, we won't have time to go through all of this today. We're just going to look at one snippet of this. It's a multiple thousands of lines of poetry. It's my absolute favorite work in any dead language I've ever read. The Heliand is beautiful. There's some fairly decent translations of it out there. People should check it out. It's great. I could even send you some links, Caleb. You could probably there's one that's up online. It's a pretty.
I was going to actually request that you go over some translations, and then I can put those links in the description.
Yeah, I'll send them to you. I'll send them to you. Yeah. Again, it's not like a translation of the Bible, right? It's like a cultural reinterpretation designed to make Christianity look really cool to Saxons. Because again, the idea here is these people have had encounters with Christianity, but they've been kind of violent, maybe massively violent. These people are still largely pagan, and they really don't get it, right? Like, they don't understand why you baptize children. They don't understand what's happening during the mass. They just don't get it, right? Like, and it's probably not even really their fault totally, right? Like, because this is in the generation after this big fight with the Franks, right? Like, this is like the putting the pieces back together stage of things. And so, yeah, you gotta make Christianity cool. I mean,
On that point,
Yeah,
the modern version of this book, this poem, would be the Jinzi Bible. Have you seen this?
I have not, but I'm excited to see this.
Jinzi Bible, Luke 1. So, like, a bunch of people have tried to put together a legit account of things, but have totally believe in, just like how they passed it down to us, the ones who saw everything firsthand and spread the message. Yo, I thought it'd be cool to drop you a message. I can't even keep going with it.
That's
But
amazing.
it is actually it's a wild idea, but I kind of like it.
Yeah,
That's like the to give people an example. What he's talking about, how do you say it? The
Heliand.
Heliand.
Yeah, the Heliand, and that word. So the weird thing about a lot of these old poems don't have titles. Like, we just have them in manuscripts. And so a lot of these names are like modern names that have been applied to text because we don't know what it was called. The reason it's called the Heliand is because Heliand is an old Saxon word that means healer. It's one who heals. And who is the Heliand in the Heliand? It's Christ. So the word for savior, they didn't have a word for savior. So they called him the healing one. But what does savior mean, Caleb? The one who heals
you?
Yeah. So it actually is a loan translation. They're translating that word. Salvator in Latin, like salve, like putting a salve on something, healing the wound, healing the wounds of the world, healing the wound of the fall. That's what Christ does. So that was the way that the monk translated it, was the one who heals, Heliand. So he's the healing one because Christ heals. I mean, not just in the temporal sense of like healing blind and the leprous, but I mean also like the entire creation, obviously, right? Like it's all connected together. In the old Saxon understanding of what the word to heal really means is to put things back together, to make things correct, as it similarly is in Latin. Salvare, I believe. My Latin isn't great. Apologies. I know I'm talking to Tradcats here. I
just learned the sign of the cross in Latin this week. Okay, so my Latin is abysmal.
Okay, well, I'm the expert then. Anyhow, look at me. I'm the captain now. Anyhow. Yeah, so it's a long poem. I'll send you some links. What we're going to look at today, people are probably like at that Monty Python get on with it moment, is the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer as so again, remembering that this is not necessarily a translation, it's an interpretation of the Lord's Prayer. I can send this to you in a chat if you want, Caleb. I don't know if you want. 1 second here. Apologies. I should have done this, but
you doing on a Discord or the private?
Discord probably works the best. I should think.
Sounds good.
1 second here. I thought I had made a separate thing. That's okay. I'll send you a handout I've used for another class. There's a lot of different languages on here. Just focus on the one that says Old Saxon. So this was from I made a whole handout for a class one day. So
I don't know if I'm able to share the screen though. Let me see if I can.
Oh. Maybe it works. We'll see. No worries.
Let me try it out and see if I can get that.
If it doesn't, I can copy paste it directly as text if that works better.
Let's see. Is that up on the screen?
Yeah. So if you scroll down to that second page, and you zoom in on Old Saxon, that middle.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find a zoom button on this. There it is.
Cool. Old Saxon. Okay, so this is the Lord's Prayer as, let's say, interpreted by the author of the Saxon, or rather, the author of the Heliand, because it's not really a translation per se. So, here we go. I'll read it in Old Saxon, and then I've done my own translation. So the translation that's listed here, I did just because I have my own proclivities, and I like to do what I do. So, here we go. So, in case people don't know what I'm talking about, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Yes, I did the Protestant version. Ha, you can't stop me. Okay.
I knew it was coming too. I'm like, he's gonna do it. I know he's gonna do it.
You can't stop me. Okay. So this is the. That's why I did it so fast. This is the Old Saxon version. Fadar usa firiho barno, thubistantem hohon himile rikia. Gewihid sitin namo wardo giwiliko. Kumathin kraftag rike. Werda thin wilio over thessa world alla. So sama an erd, so thar upa ist, anthem hoho himelo rikia, gefos dago gewilliges rad, drochtin the godo. See that drochtin word pop up there, yeah.
Mhm.
Thina helega helpa, and dialatus, heavenus ward, managoro menscolio, aso we odro manon doan. Nelatos farledian leda wichti, so forth anila willion, so we wirdiesint, ac helpus vidar alun ubilon dadion. So, this is my translation. That should be the column right next to that. Father of us children of men, you are in the high heavenly kingdom. Okay, it kind of feels like the Lord's Prayer, but again, it's an interpretation, right?
Yeah.
Hallowed be your name in every word. I like that. In every word, every word that you say, that I say, right? We want your word, your name to be hallowed. I really like that. That is an extrapolation. It's not the original text, but it kind of works, right? Like it's following the message of the gospel, even though it's not technically a translation. May your powerful kingdom come. Okay, here we get some real Saxon stuff, right? like God is so powerful. He's so powerful. He has a powerful kingdom. These are things that the Saxons want. They like powerful war chieftains. They like to go kick ass. They want a kick-ass God, if I might be so bold. They want a God that will actually destroy enemies. They want this. Okay, so the poet, who is himself a churchman, probably a monk, is like, okay, they need to see that God is powerful and he has a kingdom. They like these things. May your will be done over all this world, as on earth, so up there in the high heavenly kingdom. Give us counsel each day, good chieftain. So it's interesting here that it's not bread, but give us this day our daily bread. We're asking God for bread, but also for everything that we need, right? That we need to get through the day, right? That's why we pray. We pray just to make it today, whatever, that's why we pray. Do people not know this? Okay. This is the late 80s. So we ask for counsel. Give us counsel each day. The word for counsel here is rad. And rad here probably could have also been translated as war council. It wouldn't necessarily be always war council, but rad oftentimes had kind of like a military connotation to it. It didn't have to be, but it could. So you could say council each day. That's how I've translated it. You could also say military council, war council. You could probably throw that in there. Good chieftain. So that's my attempt at translating this really hard to translate term, drochten thagodo, which means the good chieftain, the good really war chieftain too, right? A chieftain, it doesn't mean that they're always going around killing people. It means that the chieftain of the tribe was willing to put himself in harm's way for you. He was willing to risk his life for you. He wasn't just going to be fat sitting on a chair somewhere, right? He was actually going to go to war. Your holy help, and forgive us, heaven's ward, heavenus ward. So or you could say warden of heaven. That's another way to translate that. So somebody who protects you, right? This idea of protection is very common, not just in the Lord's Prayer and not just in the translation of the Lord's Prayer here, but throughout the Heliand. The fact that God gives protection to people is very important. It's like underscored by the poet over and over and over again. Christ will give you protection. Christ will help you, right? Against the true enemies. And who are the true enemies? The devil, right? So Christ has and will continue to kick the devil's ass is kind of an underlying message that the entire poem really underscores. Because again, the poem is speaking to a warrior culture. They're kind of like the Fremen, but not on a desert planet. They're like they have this honor code thing. They're not afraid to pull out knives. Do you know what the word Saxon actually means?
I do not.
They were named after it comes from the word sox. Do you know what sox means? Long knife or short sword. So the word Saxon literally means something like people of the short sword.
That's kind of badass.
So there is kind of, again, I just bring up Fremen just because Dune is great, but like there's sort of the sense of, right, like they have a warrior culture. So to convert them, you really need to underscore that Christ is the greatest warrior of all time. Forgive us, heaven's ward, of many sins of men, as we do to other people. And this is one of my favorite parts of this version of the Lord's Prayer, because it's not really in the original, but we get, do not let evil wights lead us away as they desire, even though we are worthy of this, but help us against all evil deeds. Do you know what a wight is?
Not specifically, but I can like picture it. Like when someone says that in common language and stuff, I can kind of picture what they're referring to. But I don't know what exactly is it referring to.
People who've played D&D, earlier editions of D&D might know what this is. They are basically kind of like little evil spirits that would like kind of be roving the countryside. And if you were caught outside after dark without a fire, you might get attacked by wights. Wights could also come into your house and mess with you. I mean, essentially they're demons, but again, these people don't know what a demon is, right? Yeah. They have no concept of what that is. And the devil, he does make an appearance in the Heliand, and he but I kind of wonder what they really would have made of him in the literary sense. Like, what is his role in the story? Because the concept of plural evil spirits roving the countryside, they totally had that. That were the wights. Those were the wights, right? So it's interesting here. Instead of in deliver us from evil, we get, do not let evil wights lead us away. The fact that wights could come in and take you away was a real fear for the Saxons. And so it's interesting to see that the poet here is incorporating that into the text. In any case, I present this as just a small snippet of the Heliand. Again, it's basically the entire gospel narrative, from birth to death to resurrection. We almost get little bits of the ascension, but there's, unfortunately, the manuscript was like damaged.
Oh,
so yeah, there's little bits at the very end that we don't have, and it's really quite sad. And that
is the most tragic part of studying history, is hearing about lost books.
Yeah, we have a couple. There's like a couple surviving manuscripts of the Heliand, and like one of them is, I think, shorter than the other, and even the longest one has some bits missing. So obviously it would have been completed. We know it was actually finished and was a cohesive text designed to be performed in its entirety, probably over a couple days, by a bard. But we don't have the final end bit, which is a real shame. Yeah, what are you gonna do? I don't know, until we get Doc Brown. Hey, maybe I can go back in time, or we get some Bill and Ted. They can go back and they can like, whoa, it's the Heliand. Like,
I've never seen Bill and Ted, but I can imagine a Bill and Ted movie going back to find different poems. I think that'd be a fun movie.
The Saxons, and I only got cut twice. They had long knives. Whoa, yeah, and they would get it and like, I don't know, make like a quick photocopy and then like teleport back to our time. Yeah, it's a shame. This happens a lot of times with older works. And
like today, I found out today, my fourth favorite Roman emperor, Hadrian, wrote an autobiography of his whole life, and we don't have it anymore. We just don't have it, and that's so sad.
If I can tie what we talked about in the beginning to what we're talking about now, loss of a language. It's easier to lose a language than people really realize. It's easier to lose books than people realize. I think in an era now where you can just make instant copies, it's tempting to think that we could never lose something. But have you ever tried finding something online when you've forgotten the link and you can't remember exactly what it was called? Sometimes it's impossible to find things, and that's on the internet. Now, knowledge if knowledge is not properly maintained and transmitted over time, you can lose it. And the sad thing is once it's gone, it's gone. Like, you're never getting it back. So yeah, I like to sometimes, because I'm a masochist, I sometimes like to sit and think about all the languages we'll never know existed, just because humans have probably been speaking for around at least 40,000 years. Like, think of all the languages that have just we will never know about. It's a tragedy, but
it is a tragedy.
Such is life. So,
Well, Doc, I gotta say, I'm really enjoyed having you on for this one. I learned a lot. I'm looking forward to. I want to have you on again, actually, in a couple of weeks, maybe to do another part of the how do you say it? The Heliand?
The Heliand. Yeah,
Heliand.
Yeah, we can. If you're interested, there's a whole bit where might be fun to look at when Satan is tempting Pilate's wife, when he's messing with her dreams. which is alluded to in the Gospels, but is not really
Yes.
played out.
And it was, I think it was an early Christian tradition. That's
There's a tradition that's meshing together with the gospel narrative there. When he does that, he is wearing a Heliand, which I like to translate as Heidi helm. It's a helm of invisibility. He's wearing a magic helmet. So if anyone likes Looney Tunes Spear and Magic Helmet with Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny, so Satan has like a magic helmet, and he's like wearing this helmet to make him invisible.
What exactly is the role Satan plays in the
Effectively,
like
effectively the same as in the Christian Gospels. He's
I mean, like if they're depicting Jesus as like a war chieftain type thing, what is Satan? See, does like a rival war chieftain, an enemy? He's the enemy.
He's the enemy. Yeah, he's the one
that was the case.
Killed.
But
they don't even have to really explain like he's bad, he's the enemy, and the Saxons are like, yes, of course we will kill him.
I do love that's my favorite. I just love my favorite things about the early Christians who were like formerly pagans.
Yeah.
Was it Clovis who said when he was told the story of the crucifixion, because it wouldn't have happened if me and my Franks were there.
Yeah.
It's like he's got that energy is so good.
There's a lot of that energy with the Saxons. Yeah, it's just like you don't need to explain why he's bad. They're like, oh well, clearly he's evil. So we're just gonna clearly.
He has a Heidi helm. Only evil people use those.
Yeah. So
awesome.
Satan uses magic that's nasty. But it's interesting too because Christ also, like the wedding at Cana, in the Heliand version, Christ uses runes to turn the water into wine.
Oh.
He uses holy runes to turn the water into wine.
That reminds me of you in Paz's episode on magic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, as I pointed out on that episode, in English, the word for the gospel, what does that mean? It means the good spell. Originally, it meant good spell. So we have the best spell. The gospel is the greatest spell. So we should all have spells, and we should have the best spells, which are Christian spells, which are prayers, which is what the Lord's Prayer is. It is a spell, and I don't care if that alienates half your audience, because you know what I mean. It is an actual spell. It is the real deal spell for real. It's the good stuff. It's like I always say, maybe it's just because I'm a converted pagan myself. Like when you realize that Christianity is the actual mystery religion in the truest, real sense of mysteries, like sacraments. Then it's like why aren't more pagans converting? Because we got the real stuff. It's the actual stuff. It's the stuff that everyone had talked about, right? Like for all these years, thousands of years, people are looking for this stuff. They're trying to find it. Is it here? Is it there? We're gonna go on quests to find it. Oh, turns out, right? It's in the place you least expect it, right? It's in a manger, right? Like it's on the cross. It's these places you don't expect it, but it is the mystery religion. We have spells. And they're really good. And they're a lot better than the pagan spells. So quit being pagan and do what the Saxons did, right? Become Christian. Anyhow, that's my spiel at the end.
Well, again, Doc, thank you so much for coming on. This is another great episode. Tell people where they can find you at.
You can find me on Twitter at Altphilologe. I'm certain you can write that in the description. In my defense, when I made my Twitter account, I didn't realize I was going to get followers, and so I put it in German, which was probably not the greatest idea. I do some stuff every once in a while on my own YouTube channel, The Wandering Humanists. Caleb has been on. Friend of the show, Paz, has been on. I also show up on Paz's channel his show once a month. We do on the Scarlet Thread Society, we do the Enchanted Office Hours. Last month for May, we did a deep dive into the esoteric history of Tears for Fears.
Okay, I'm sold.
Yeah, which was, and I'm not making that up. There is actually a legit esoteric history of Tears for Fears.
I do love Tears for Fears, dude. One of the best bands.
We talk, usually the episodes are more about this kind of stuff, medieval history, European history, folklore, religion, that kind of stuff. But every once in a while I get a bee in my bonnet. And so last month we did a Tears for Fears deep dive. This month upcoming, we haven't recorded it yet. We're going to do I'm going to do a whole Pentecostal speaking in tongues breakdown of Pentecost for our upcoming season of Pentecost.
Well, now you're getting close to my home territory because I was raised Pentecostal. There's a lot of speaking in tongues, so I'll be very interested to hear.
I might call your previous tribe out a little bit.
Well, I hope you do because they need it.
I might be a little harsh, but that's fine. Yeah,
they need it. Yeah. Great people, some of the nicest people, but
They are. They're
it
great.
gets weird sometimes. I'll tell you some stories after we end this episode. But
Sounds
well,
good.
everyone, thank you for listening, Doc. Thanks again for coming on, everyone. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Might have a few more episodes coming out this month and next month. Some solo streams, maybe. I might try doing a little gaming stream because I'm bored. But check out the stuff, everyone. Definitely go check out the Substack. We have a most recent Substack is a Disney themed Substack. Surprisingly, Connor ended up writing an essay on Lion King, and then I wrote one on Wall-E. This was not planned. It kind of just happened. He sent me a Lion King one. I was like halfway through the Wall-E one. I'm like, dog, we got to seam. We got to seam this time. Let's go.
Very cool.
But the Lion King one. He was very good, and not toot my own horn too much, but I do think I did a good job with the Wall-E one. So everyone go check that out. Besides that, have a good night, and remember, God made you special, and He loves you very much.